Hey team, how are you? This is my second week back at work. Just to remind you what I'm doing in these videos. I met a neighbor of mine at a drinks thing. He runs a team, about 100 people, big team. And he does either one day at home, one day in the office a week or two. But his organisation has made a decision that from now on, they're going to factor into their cost base, basically that that they'll be working 1 or 2 days a week in the office. Everyone in their whole organisation. It's not a small organisation. It's really well known in Australia. It's huge. So if they're making this decision, then like sooner or later it's going to catch on, right? So my idea is that we're all going to have to get used to this blended way of working, work from home, work from office. Even if you're still primarily working from home, or sorry, all at home, I reckon eventually what you're going to need is some sort of hybrid where you come to a shared space to work together. So what I'm doing is a series on 5 principles around if you're kind of blended and you move to this environment of working from home, working for the office, what are 5 principles that are going to help you maximize that environment to make your business run? Okay. What I talked about last week was this idea of prioritizing collaboration and connection. What I'm going to talk about this week is the idea of making time for the water cooler. Okay. So let's talk through it. Just before I do, remember last week the idea is to make yourself a list, okay, of all the things. So the idea here is that generally leave relationship stuff to so what I'm doing here is basically just reminding you again of what we covered last week, right? It's like a mini series on Netflix, a sitcom on Netflix. We review what we did last time before we go to the new episode. Okay, so remember, generally relationship stuff we keep to the office, task stuff we do alone at home. But because we've also got the virtual environment where you can get stuff done, you can also do non-important collaboration work virtually at home as well. But that's the general rule. And I would prioritize your time in the office, maximizing the time you can have with your key stakeholders, customers, suppliers, staff, right? So that's the general rule. What we're going to talk about this week is the idea of water cooler conversation. So here's the thing is during the break, I went to the beach a lot, but I also did a course, a pretty serious 2-day course in complexity theory, as you do. Now, I'm not a complete nerd. The reason I did this is because, like, I don't know about you, but 2020 felt like one big complex experiment of how people would respond under situations of pressure and stress and uncertainty. Now, a couple of things I learned from that was that one of them was about constraints. And constraints are really big in complexity theory because what we're looking at is the way agents within systems interrelate with one another under certain constraints. What I learned from that was that if you overly constrain a system, right? So think when the government puts too many rules on people, okay? People will start to work around that. And workarounds have become a part of our everyday life. They're everywhere, where people try and avoid rules and because they're overly complex, or they don't work in their context. They find a way around it. The interesting about constraints and rules is that they're contextually specific. Try and say that 10 times. So I've kind of got that in the background. That's the idea as I think about why water cooler matters. Okay, so this is about water cooler conversations. What I'm recommending is that when you go to the office, let's say this is here your available time of the day, whenever you start, whenever you finish. What I'm recommending is that you don't fill, you don't fill all of that with meetings. What I'm recommending is that you keep at least, let's change the color here. You keep at least 2 to 4 hours free. Okay, let's go 2. 4 is just out of control. Let's go 1 to 2. I don't know where I got 4 from. Let's go 1 to 2 hours free for informal chats. All right? That's what I'm recommending. But here's the reason why. Back to my idea around constraints, right? Up here is that the more I work, the more with different organizations, the more I realize that it's actually the way the collective system works together that matters in terms of performance and output. So in that, you think about the fact that you've got to establish relationships with a whole lot of other people around you, with your team, with other functions. And then outside of you, you've got to establish them with customers. And I call this kind of your ecosystem, your broader ecosystem or set of relationships, people that depend on you. Now, when you're in a formal system, when you have formal conversations that are based around metrics, rules, people tend to play the conversation in a safe way. Okay. You don't tend to find out what they really think, and it's not a great place to develop trust. Whereas in informal situations, and we all know this, people tend to be more spontaneous. They tend to open up more, and it tends to be a place where relationships can really develop. Now, if we go back to our theory of constraints, is that often when it comes to getting business done, you know, there's the kind of the traditional way, right? And then there's kind of the informal way that works in that context. And in same with any organization, there's kind of these two systems. One based on traditional and safety, and the other based on relationship. Now, the thing is, you think about the outcome you want on a project you've got, in terms of your own career, in terms of influence. We need to work both systems, okay, to achieve that outcome. We can't ignore the formal because that's how the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed. But we also can't ignore the relationships because we know that's how stuff gets done. So we need to work both systems. The thing is that if we go to the office back over here, and we spend all of our day here working the traditional system, we can probably do that at home, if I was really honest, right? Filling out dotting the I's, crossing the T's, filling out the forms, going through the formal processes. We have got an incredible opportunity while we're in the office to work the informal system. Is this starting to make sense? Yeah, perfect. So let me just wrap this up for you. Many of us are starting our years working blended in the office and at home. First rule is prioritize collaboration and connection and teamwork, because that's much harder to do virtually when you're not with someone. Second rule is this: leverage the water cooler hallway conversations. Don't fill all your day full of doing stuff, full of technical work, because the informal system is as powerful as the other. Okay. Makes sense? Take care. It's been useful. See you soon.